Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Emergency room doctor Jeff Kopstein joins us tonight on Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. Jeff will talk about his passion for medicine and helping others. Tonight, we get a glimpse into the world of medicine from a man who is spending his life helping others stay healthy.
Boy, I got a doctor all to myself for a good half hour. I got a pain right here.
That's the first thing I usually hear.
Yes, I'm sure. You're a doctor, and then they have you for 4 hours. So, Jeff, I know when kids are younger, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a basketball player. At what point in your life did you know that medicine was going to be your chosen career path?
Yeah, I mean, basically for my entire life, as long as I can remember, medicine was what I wanted to do. The first real memory I had of, wanting to be a doctor was a second grade project. We had to build our profession in a shoebox. And I remember building a pediatrician's office in the shoebox. My parents helped me, but, it was my choice, my entire life. That's what I wanted to do. It was always medicine.
Now, what made you do that? Because you went to the doctor, because you saw things? What prompted you to say medicine's for me?
Yeah,
at a young age, second grade.
Yeah, second grade was a very young age. I mean, I think back then I was just young and, for some reason the science really is what inspired me. And I picked medicine, just what interested me. But the main thing was, when I was growing up, I was, 10 years old and, my grandfather became very sick. He had liver problems and ended up, long story short, was basically 24 hours away from dying. And he ended up getting a liver transplant, basically on his deathbed. And all of his doctors throughout that process, and especially after the process, really inspired me to want to help people, want to make an impact on people's lives. And, from that moment on, medicine, there was no changing from there.
Well, I know that your grandfather was a big influence on you because one of the pictures you sent, and we'll probably put it up.
Yeah.
I think it was graduating from medical school.
Yeah. So
it was you and your grandfather.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments in my life actually was that graduation from medical school. He's actually a dentist. And at medical school, we were really lucky. And, if one of your family members had a doctorate of any sort, they were able to what they call hood you, or put the hood on you of your, your degree, which is in the picture there, both of us having our different colored hoods to represent, our different medical licenses. So, yeah, that was one of my favorite moments. And I was extremely lucky to have him there with me, as I said, with his liver transplant. He was actually only supposed to live about 10 years after his liver transplant, is what they predicted. Because back then, the science and the medicine was not as up to date as it is now. But, we were very lucky. 23 years later, he's still with us. So,
well, studies have shown that up to 50% of sophomores in college don't even know their major yet.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the field of medicine, those prerequisites are for anything, I'm guessing: dentistry, pediatrics, thoracic surgery, anything, plastic surgery.
Exactly.
At what point in a med student's life, academic life, does he or she have to make the choice? This is the field I'm going into. Do you graduate from medical school and then you choose your field? Is it like graduating from law school? And when you graduate, I'm going into to be a defense attorney. I'm going to criminal law. I'm going into corporate law. What does that look like?
Yeah. So basically, once you get into medical school, you still, you're wanting to be a doctor, but you don't have to choose which field you want to be in yet. So medical school, your first 2 years of medical school are strictly in the classroom. So that's where you're doing your actual medical school courses, anatomy, pharmacology, microbiology, all of those classes. Book studying is in your first 2 years. Your second 2 years of medical school are when you're doing your rotations. So your third year of medical school, that first year after those 2 years, you're doing your rotations, where you're 1 month after the next, you're going from pediatrics to surgery to internal medicine, family medicine, all of these different fields of medicine. You're doing 1 month at a time. And that's when you kind of get exposed to what the lifestyle is, what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And then right before your fourth year, or right at the beginning of your fourth year, is when you pretty much have to decide. That's when you basically go and decide, this is the field I want to go into, because that's when you apply for your residency. And your residency is going to be that next step after medical school, after you graduate, which is when you go into your field. So during your fourth year is when you pretty much kind of specialize in those rotations, figure out exactly what field you want to do, and then apply to residency.
So when you do, what percentage of people do you think choose residency within the 15-mile, 20-mile radius of where they graduate from school? Do they get it and then fly to another state? How does that work?
So that is the biggest thing that people, it's really hard to understand. Even when you're in the process, it's really hard to understand. Residency is pretty much chosen for you. Basically, you go and do these audition rotations and apply to these different programs around the country. I mean, people go from state to state, anywhere in the entire country. You do your rotations in the field you want to do. And then there's what's called a match program. So you actually have to match with the program. So you rank your top programs, the programs rate their top students, and the computer pretty much matches you. So there's actually a match day, which is one of the biggest days of your medical school, because that is when you are going to be chosen of which program you're going to, and everyone finds out on the same day. And the programs, the actual residency programs, the training programs, find out on that same day also who their students are going to be for the next coming year. So it's actually a pretty interesting process that I don't think really exists in any other field.
Well, it's funny because it may not exist in any other field, but I taught high school for so many years. To me, it sounds like the day when the list comes out is who gets what part, because you auditioned and West Side Story, you're Tony, you're Maria, you're in the ensemble.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. So how many times, is there always a time when there is no match?
So there are students that don't match. So yeah, there could be. So basically what happens is at the first day of the week, on a Monday it usually is, you find out if you matched. So out of all the programs on your list that you ranked, you find out on Monday if you did match. If you didn't match, they call it a scramble, which is during that week, they release the programs that still have open spots. And you then can go back to those programs that you originally didn't apply to or didn't audition for and say, hey, I'm still looking, you're looking, let's talk. And you kind of do another kind of last minute interview over the phone or Zoom, that kind of thing. And then you kind of go through a rematch if you don't match. But there are still a lot of students that don't match. It's not an easy process. Just like getting to medical school, residency is the same thing. There's different fields that are more competitive than other fields. Your board scores are going to determine your GPA, your entire application. Just like getting into medical school and just like into law school, any other field, it's very competitive. And so a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are a group of people that don't match and have to kind of reapply the next year.
Oh, and what do they do for that time period when they haven't matched?
Yeah, when you don't match, you try to improve your resume basically, or improve your application. So you do research, you try to publish papers, you work with other professors at your school, do different things to maybe retake your boards, try to get higher scores, to try to get to that next step.
So let's talk about that next step. So you chose the fast-paced and demanding emergency room to follow your passion. But is that something everyone, when they go to the hospital for residency, that they start in the emergency room, or is that something you choose and then after 2 years there you may leave? Some people I know have never left. I know people who who've retired, they out of the emergency room. They went into the emergency room, their entire career in the emergency room, and they retired from the emergency room.
Yeah. So my field, actually, I did a internal medicine residency. And so, when we spoke before, part of my job is working in the emergency room. But the field that I chose from internal medicine is called a hospitalist. So basically what I do, it's a pretty relatively new field. So that's why, a lot of people don't know about it. And it really is kind of up and coming, I would say. But basically anyone who has to stay overnight in the hospital or be admitted to the hospital from the emergency room, basically my job is to take over for those patients. So, you go into the emergency room doctor sees you, treats you, determines, can you go home? If you go home, great, you're treated, go home. I never see you. If you have to stay and be admitted to the hospital, you may be there, depending on how sick you are, 1, 2, 3, 4 days. a week, 2 weeks. It depends on how long, how sick you are. So at that point, once it's determined that you're staying in the hospital, that's kind of where I take over. So part of my job is in the emergency room. Most of it is actually in the hospital itself. But yeah, so the next step is residency. And that's when, you determine, basically what you're going to be doing for kind of the rest of your life and the rest of your career. So I chose internal medicine was my specialty. But there are, like you were saying, specialties. Emergency room is another specialty, general surgery, dermatology, radiology, all those are different specialties that you choose in residency. And then even from there, you can even specialize further, and it's what they call fellowship, which is the next step after residency, if you choose to even specialize more so in your field. So for instance, from general surgery, you can, become a cardiothoracic surgeon, from internal medicine from my field, you can branch off and do fellowship in cardiology or gastroenterology or neurology. And so all these are different fields if you want to specialize further after. But residency, the length of it also is determined by which field you choose. My residency was 3 years, but general surgery could be 5 years, neurosurgery 7 years. It just depends. So,
well, interesting because I never tell the viewers, or I haven't told the viewers how I got from wherever I got as a teacher for 33 years to this show. And I was raised in Yonkers, New York, and at the age of 16, moved to Florida. In Florida, behind the wheel of a car, I had an epileptic seizure. We did not know I had epilepsy. I was diagnosed at 16. And I'm bringing that about because I've had, before the age of 20, I had all too many rides in ambulances, stays in the hospital, and those all important doctors. I have so much respect for them and the nursing staff. But it leads me to, as I got older, especially with some other issues with my own sons, I think that it was a powerful thing to be a little more involved in your medical treatment than just leaving it to the doctor, not to bash anything or whatever. They're brilliant and all that, but I really think you have to be your own advocate. When my wife's parents were being treated for certain things, I was the healthcare proxy because unfortunately I had that information and those experiences. Through the years also, I have mixed my regular internist the last 5 or 6 years with a naturopath.
Yeah.
And I've had some doctors who did not forget about work with them. They don't really work with them, but they didn't want me going to them. And I found some doctors who said, hey, you can use them. They can order their blood tests. We'll order our blood tests. And I saw less of an ego than I had in the past. Yeah. Where is your stand on that, on people advocating for themselves, being more knowledgeable? Because, I wrote a memoir called Adversity Defeated, Turn Your Struggles into Strengths when I was 54. And I was diagnosed at 16. So nobody knew I had it except for doctors and a couple of family members and 2 or 3 close friends. And I just think that getting more involved and not letting your illness or your struggles define you, you define yourself. Where do you stand on that kind of school of thought?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very big on being your own advocate. And also, like you were saying, families being advocate for their family members, because, in this day and age, we have so much research online, so many opportunities to look things up ourselves. There is a fine line. I do see a lot of patients coming in and saying, this is what I read, this is what I want. And, it's a little different when you come in like that stance. Our reply normally is, didn't know Dr. Google got their, medical degree. But, it is there, but in a lot of sense, there is so much information online that people are going to have all of this knowledge coming to you. And so, it is very important for people to have that knowledge and not just trust whatever their doctor says, and be willing to be open to different treatments and, know about their medical history, because, you can go see a new doctor, or God forbid, you have to go to the hospital and you may not know your medical history and they're starting from scratch. If you come in and you say, I'm taking these medications, I was diagnosed with this, there's a lot more to go off of. And it's easier for the doctors to be able to learn about you, to treat you, to know your history, to know where to go moving forward. And, a lot of these patients that come in, it's so hard to even reach their families. We want to, especially this past year and a half, 2 years almost with COVID now, it was hard to see family because they weren't allowed in the hospitals. Before that, it was families would come in and we would see some family members and it would be great. We'd be able to talk about the treatment plans with the families. They'd be there for them. They would know what's going on. And then other family members, we couldn't even reach them on the phone. Who would you want us to call? There's no family to even call. I mean, you try to call them and no one answers. They don't even care about callbacks. And to me, it was a little strange to have a patient in the hospital for 3, 4, 5 days and not have a family member be reachable. So I think it's really, really important to know about your medical history, know about even your family's medical history if that time comes where you need to be involved. And do your own research online, but also, listen to the doctors, because you type in one symptom online, it tells you you're dying, basically. So, you need to be careful with that line.
So true, because I had a dermatologist back in Rockland County, New York, and in his office there was a mug and it said, your Google search will have nothing to do with my diagnosis.
Exactly.
It was really very funny. There was a time once I went to my internist. I don't even think I had 800 doctors, but I had a good number of doctors. And I went and my body had turned blue. My arms had turned blue. I went on Google. The word leukemia came up. I went right to the doctor. He looked at me. He smiled. He said, is that blue shirt over there brand new? And I said, yes. He said, okay, you can go home now and that'll be $20. So it was the dye of the shirt or something, sweating or whatever. So it's craziness. I want to circle back for a second. You did mention COVID, of course. And even though you're a younger doctor, certainly younger than most doctors I have at the moment, you were a doctor before COVID.
Yeah.
And you were a doctor during COVID. How tremendously different or not was your job and the situations on a day-to-day basis during the uptick? You're in LA?
Yes.
During the uptick in California.
Yeah. So, I mean, all over the country, it's probably, way different. Every doctor you'll talk to is different. For me, we were basically in the hospital during this time where, there were patients in hallways, there were patients, intubated and on ventilators, not in the ICU because it's just too full. We basically saw such a difference from, one day to the next. And the biggest thing I would say is the support, like we were already just talking about, the support from family, not having family be there for these patients who are in the hospital for weeks at a time, who are ventilated, who, need support and have nobody there. To me, that was the biggest impact that I saw on the patients themselves. It's pretty remarkable, actually, how much outside support can help you in your recovery. And there have been multiple studies done on that of family support, outside support from the community, on patients' recoveries. And so I think that was a big impact from the patient side. From the doctors and medical staff side and medical providers, nurses, everyone. I mean, it just took a toll on everybody. I mean, we went from, having on average, 15, 16, 17 patients a day that we would see to 25, 27 patients. And for me, it was hard personally because I was not able to give each patient the amount of time that I'm used to. I like going in and spending a lot of time with the patients every day, sitting down, getting to know exactly who they are beyond just their medical problems, because, their lifestyle does affect their healing, does affect, how they're treated moving forward. And so not having that time and that personal connection with the patients really impacted me personally.
Yeah, and that was going to lead me to my next question, which is because also I know that I've read some studies or just some articles about even people in comas being spoken to by family members.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, as a human being, not just a human being who happens to be a doctor, how did you and some of your colleagues deal with your own mental health during such a trying time and such a high pressure, emotional, medically induced emergency, times 10 situation?
Yeah. I mean, basically we kind of had to rely on, the supporting ourselves. A lot of times at the hospital, we're colleagues, we're friends, me and the other doctors, other nursing staff there. And, we are cordial with each other, professional, but it really became, I want to say, a bonding time and, really learning support. And, I have never been in, the Army, the military, anything like that. But from what I hear and from friends, when you go through such a time like this, you really bond with the people who are there, and the people outside the situation don't really understand what you are going through. And so, to me, that's kind of, we grew closer, the doctors there, we were able to sit down, talk about, what's happening in our day, patients we've lost, and really get support from each other. Because as much as when you come home, you do have that family, you do have friends to support you, they don't understand what you're truly going through. So that was kind of the biggest difference I saw, was the bonding between your own colleagues and own medical staff and entire hospitals coming together to support each other.
Dr. Jeff Kopstein, thank you so much for joining us today. And
of course.
Your passion and all the experiences that you've had in medicine. There's probably 30 more years in you to have more experiences.
Thank you so much for thank you so much for having me. I hope I inspire people who are out there, young people who are wanting to become doctors, to pursue their passion. It's worth it in the end. A lot of work to get there, as we talked about, but it's worth it. So thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. This is great information here for young people on entering any career path, but certainly medicine. Have a great day. Jeff, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.